all for your presence and your participation. I won't keep this opening long. I think my aim and my duty for this session is just to say good morning and just to remind us that we're all doing well and we are part of the solutions that we are talking about. Discourse is always the first point of departure when it comes to solution making. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Ms. Baratang Mia, to get onto the stage, just have a brief greeting and just introduce her topic for the day and just explain to us what that will be looking like. Can I just have a round of applause for myself, guys? It's an early morning. Thank you.
Can the presentation play? Is this off? Okay. So this session is about the internet and me. It's supposed to be energetic, but this is the day where energy is something I'm drinking from a very deep well. Yeah, I think we've had a very interesting session for the whole week, and you've heard about what's your role on the internet, and I think by now you have a perception of what role can you play in terms of policy making. So I'm going to start the session with a little bit of question and answers whilst I'm waiting for my presentation to come up. So if we can just talk about what are the three main joys of the internet and three main frustrations of not having internet access. And maybe I'll take 5 comments. So the joys of having internet, what are the benefits of having internet? And, oh, thank you, he arrived. What are the, the frustrations of not having internet? So if you want to be like forever employed, you make yourself indispensable like that guy. He's holding all our PowerPoint presentation in his laptop. Yeah. So I couldn't function because I was like, if he doesn't arrive, then I'm screwed. So can we talk about that? Who wants to talk about the benefits of having internet? Oh, here, there's
good morning.
You're speaking at a societal scale, not you as an individual.
No, not me as an individual. No.
Okay.
I'm going to try and tackle the answer. I think in this day and age, everyone talks about as a default, basically digitalization, and digitalization enables people to have internet. Once you've got a digital infrastructure, then you've got the internet. Let's assume that you've got internet because you've got access, you've got connectivity. When you've got access and connectivity, basically, then you've got access to information that otherwise you'd not have. Lots of information these days is digitalized, so it's sitting somewhere in the cloud, and you can access the information whatever you want. You can jump into Google and access the information. You can jump into the web and look for employment opportunities. Sitting in a community, when you've got internet, you can do website development and offer services remotely and. But I think I've answered your question. And streaming various things that are fruitful, not negative things. YouTube these days, it's got a whole lot of information that really assists people in learning about things that otherwise you'd not get knowledge of. So yeah, it is that. Thank you.
Good morning, Mark Alkins from the internet. I am the internet is me. To me, not having internet or not having my cell phone in my pocket when I leave in the morning is, I forgot to put my trousers on when I left, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like that. I attend a funny event called Africa Burn when it runs. It is in the middle of the desert. It is 125 miles north of Ceres, 125 kilometers north of Ceres, 125 kilometers south of Calvinia. It's in the middle of nowhere. Yet, when I get there, I can put up a pole, and there's no cell phone coverage there. Yet, I put up a pole, I put up a very directional antenna, and I can get internet. And until I do that, I don't feel complete. It's a sorry state that I go to a festival and I still need the internet, but never mind. But having that internet means that when the parents of certain children arrive, those parents can send a WhatsApp message to those children to say that they've arrived safely. It's just a means of communication that our children, people under the age of 16, take for granted that has already existed, has always existed. Yet we grew up without the internet. That's what the internet means to me, is the ability to communicate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Luandi Sombecheni. I'm from Kabeja in the Eastern Cape. I am a true beneficiary of internet or having internet access. If I did not have access to internet, I wouldn't have known about this eye-opening and informative program such as this Internet Governance Forum. So, for instance, this event was not advertised on the mainstream or the traditional media streams like your radio and newspaper. It was shared on the internet platforms. So having internet, it opens up your world. I am a true example of that. When I got here on Monday, and I attended the first session, I did not know about the many elements that are within the ecosystem of internet. And I can imagine that if I did not have access to internet, I would have missed out a lot. I wouldn't have learned about these many elements that are found within the ecosystem of internet. So having internet, I think it is truly a human right. It is something that must be brought to everyone. Access to internet, in fact, must be brought to everyone in the world, especially from people from the rural areas. They need to have access to internet so that they can be exposed to these opportunities. I'm not sure about the frustrations of not having internet. I don't even think that people who do not have internet are frustrated because they do not know what they are missing. I'm sure they will start getting frustrated when they know the true power of internet. Then they can be frustrated. But basically having access to internet, it just opens up your world. Thank you.
Can we have, I just said. So I'm really, I just got a shock of my life, and I just want us to give 1 minute of silence to Muzi. I know Muzi as one. He's from the ICT Chamber of Commerce, and I've been working with him on a big project to change South Africa. We were working on the WOAN together, and just seeing rest in peace for him just took my head to another space. So I need to calm myself down, and I just want us to take a 1 minute of silence for him, because I know he played a huge role in the industries, and we still need Muzi's brain for transformation. So can we just take 1 minute of just silence? His name is Muziwake Makai. Just let his soul fly further than he could in this world.
I think just to give context, Muzi is one of those guys who are in the forefront, especially in the spectrum space. He was leading an organization that I know for a fact it was one of the consortiums that were going to go for the Huawei, basically the wholesale infrastructure spectrum thing. We've really lost in the ICT space. And I think we need to treasure the time that we spend together and try and disseminate as much information that we have in our heads so that other people benefit. I just wanted to give a context of who he was, and may his soul rest in peace.
Hi guys, I think we can carry on with the question around the internet. What does it do in terms of, the opportunities in terms of communities and societies? So I think if we can get a few more hands while we give a few more minutes before we start. Is there anyone that would like to tackle the question? Thank you.
I think with what's been happening, hi everyone, my name is Anyue. What's been happening quite recently with the COVID pandemic and people not being able to get assistance or healthcare, or at least the limited numbers of people within a room, as per health regulations in different countries. What technology, the internet has actually helped with is connecting people to, get telehealth services and being able to speak to doctors or at least medical practitioners who can assist you to, ask you what your symptoms are and sort of fast track all the triaging that happens at hospitals. That, it's not like anyone is touching you. They ask you, how do you feel? They'll ask you certain questions, and then based on those symptoms, they can then escalate it and say, look, you have to come here, we'll come to you, or XYZ, or actually this is how we can resolve that. And that brings a lot of efficiency, and also a model that is cost effective and cost efficient. So that's, I think, quite in relation to what we're dealing with health-wise, helping people.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dinyako. For me, I feel benefits of the internet. The internet has helped us to have access to people in other countries. And being in an industry where we create opportunities for people, it's been absolutely amazing for us to be able to connect with people from other countries, to the point where we have created opportunities for some of our beneficiaries, and they are now exposed to opportunities abroad and are currently living abroad. And I believe that without the internet or access to the internet, this wouldn't have necessarily been possible. So just that opportunity to be able to meet up with people from various countries and still create opportunities at a far larger scale for me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I think we've had, the right of access to information that you would have not been able to access, and global networking as well, which obviously provides, opportunities that you wouldn't have gotten locally, perhaps. Is there anyone else who'd like to add on it? I think the other element as well, we spoke a bit on the disadvantages, and I think this is more of yesterday's conversation around cybersecurity, cyber crimes, disinformation, misinformation, those elements. Is there anyone who'd like to add on those key points? No? Okay, no, that's not a problem. I think we're still sorting out the presentation, but I'd like to touch on what Zanio had said. And she spoke about how last year COVID has kind of shown us the gap that we have when we're talking about a digital divide. Our kids had to now understand online learning, and a lot of them actually struggled to the degree to say that they had to now go back and learn how to use Microsoft Teams. They had to learn how to use Zoom. They had to understand the basics of muting, unmuting. So that showed in actual sense that in the future, if we are going to say e-learning, there's still a basis of digital literacy, access to devices, which we very well know is a very big issue currently in South Africa. So COVID-19 not only showed us that gap of digital literacy, lack of access and infrastructure, but also our education system and the curriculum, which I think is something that was mentioned earlier on, that we are very behind when it comes to understanding that if we are saying in the future, we're going to be leaders in the creation and element of it in terms of AI, technologies, etc., we need to understand that digital literacy needs to be at the core mandate of our curriculum. I think I'm going to hand over to Ne Baratang for her session to start.
It's still question and answer. In fact.
Okay, all right. I'll roam around with the mic.
The next question would be, in terms of cybersecurity and what we discussed yesterday, I'd like to hear from the room, how far do you think, what just one policy that you think we should compile and say, this is an important factor, and from what we've been sitting here for the whole week, we should be talking about it.
I think it's, thank you for the question, Baratang. So I think it's a combination of what was discussed yesterday and throughout the week. There's an element of unaccountability. And I think it's because it's just been that way. So for instance, when we spoke about the content that people put on their websites, there's almost the separation to say, well, I have the website, and or rather I'm an ISP and I give you the platform to create this website. However, what you put on this website has got nothing to do with me. So that opens up the floodgates for fraudulent activities or fraudulent websites that create a space for fraudulent activities. So I believe that one of the policies that we really need to be looking at is creating that dotted line of accountability to say, if you as an ISP or someone that gives someone that platform to put content on, you are also accountable to some degree or some level. And it's a tough one. It's not something that's going to be easy. But I believe in the times where there's artificial intelligence, you can embed, systems that allow you to pick up keywords and allow you to pick up abusive content and images. There's no way that we're talking about developing, AI and developing a technology to the point that we are. But when it comes to the things that matter, protecting children, child pornography, abusive content, prejudicial content, racially aggravating content, things that we should not be talking about in 2021, can't use those technologies to resolve those social ills and criminal activities. I think it's ridiculous. So for me, it would be policy that looks at creating all-round accountability for content that is put online. Thank you.
Summarize it. It was too much. I want the summary.
Accountability online from ISPs when it comes to content.
Okay. There's another hand at the back there. And then, did you have your hand up?
So just as a counterpoint, just bear in mind that you wouldn't want to, say, for example, have the postal service held liable for everything that was sent through the mail. So for example, if you send a blackmail letter through the postal service, you wouldn't want the post office to be held liable. If you were to do that, they would have to read everyone's mail to make sure you're not abusing their platform. In the same way with the digital space, you want people to be reading all of the stuff and involving them stuff in what's on the platform, then you're okay with them effectively censoring your content. In the same way as you don't want some government entity to be listening to your phone calls to make sure you're not abusing the phone system through the phone calls you make, you don't want to give them that authority. So I'm not going to make any particular position point, but I'm just saying what is significantly different about the internet that means that it's okay for a government organization to moderate content or to force you to moderate content. Shouldn't it be an open carrier system?
So I'm gonna start. My session was supposed to be up.
Mark Elkins, I'm going to strongly second the last speaker. I run an ISP. I love automation. I believe in automation. That means a person can come to my website, they can register a domain, they can buy some web space, and they can create a website. And when a domain is created, I will see the name so I can see if there's something funny going on there. It says, it's got the word gov in the co. before the co.za part of it or something like that. And I don't know what they're going to be putting up. If it's child porn and something that's really obvious, sure, I'll take it down. But then we also have people, organizations like ISPA, that when they receive a complaint, they will ask for content to be pulled down as well. So I believe that we actually honestly have a system in place that actually works quite well. If you're a large ISP, relatively small, then maybe you won't notice when a bad domain is put up or bad content is put up. But most people are actually reasonably responsible. ISPs are actually quite nice people, generally speaking. I'm nice, I'm and therefore getting rid of that bad stuff is something that we will do. But I don't see how we can be held responsible, personally responsible, for when a bad person comes in and abuses the system, unless we're made aware of it.
Thank you very much. Oh, there's the last hand now, because hands are popping up and I'm supposed to start. The last hand.
Good morning, everyone. I've been the silent participant since Tuesday. I'm Mareshni from ZAIGF. And what Mark has mentioned is actually quite familiar to me because I regularly get queries to take down things And I think the difficulty, and this is not a counterpoint to anyone, but it's just taking from both what you've said as well as the other participants today, is that unfortunately we need to find a balance, and that's the difficulty part of it. Because a lot of people have abused the system in saying, take this website down because they're upset with what's happening. In the sense that I've had a claim, for example, where a gambler was unhappy because he lost money and therefore wanted the online casino to come down. So accountability is important. However, there needs to be some sort of balance between the two so that freedom to post or have a website is up, but within a certain limit or certain parameters. And that's where there's a space where we need some more enforcement in place. Yes, ISPA is there. However, if I'm not mistaken, and Mark can actually correct me, that's only limited to members of ISPA with regards to ISPs that are members. If you're not a member, they do not actually, cannot assist you with the takedown. So it's limited in that sense. And lucky we have ISPA at least. It's a start, but we need more institutions like them so that we can monitor the internet with obviously taking the freedoms into account as well. Thank you.
When we started on Monday, I was very clear that I have to be as partial as I can. So when people make comments, I say thank you and I don't add my 2 cents because we're collecting information as ZAIGF. So I'm going to start with the basics. And after this whole week, I'm repeating the same thing we did on Monday. And it's purely because for some people, they work with other young people in the community, they work with organizations, and they're going to want to explain the concepts we did throughout the week. But without the basic foundation of those concepts, sometimes it's difficult to explain to someone who doesn't understand what you're talking about. So I'm going to start with the basic, and explaining all of it throughout the day. So what is the internet? Okay, so the internet was invented by scientists who wanted to link their computers to one another, so that they can become a network of networks. So linking one computer to the other, to the other, to the other. They soon began to discover the broader potential of this early project and found a way for computers and individuals to share information. The internet was built to foster resilience in the networks. If one piece breaks, not everything breaks, as well as to maximize freedom of choice for individuals. About what to send and what to receive. So that's the basics of the internet. Now I'm going to ask Mark if he agrees with my description, because he's been saying I'm Mark from the internet the whole week. So I want to find out what's his definition. But guys, it's very important we understand the distinction between the internet and the World Wide Web, because that's where the confusion comes in. If those who watched when the government was interviewing Mark Zuckerberg about the internet, when they were talking about the internet, they were talking about something else. And it's because officials still can't do that distinction. So it's very important for you guys who work with young people who are going to go out there and give information to understand what you mean when you say the internet. So I'm going to give Mark 2 minutes of mic, of flow.
Yes, indeed, Mark Alkins here. Yes, indeed. The internet is, well, the word itself, internet. It's a whole bunch of networks interconnected with a view to resilience, so that if something bad happens, like a line goes down, then traffic can be routed via an alternative route. And that happens quite magically. And that's really all the internet is. But those networks obviously are all using common protocols. So when we send a piece of email from one place, from one destination to another destination, it uses port 25 of TCP/IP, and it goes through a particular chat so that the system works properly. A bit of echo on this. And that's what the internet is. And I was around long before the web existed. I used to have an email address, and there was no point telling a person I had an email address because they would just give me a blank stare. Not so true today. And there were many other systems that would give you a web-like system for data, etc., before the web existed as well. The web has simply made things so much easier. And the web is simply an application that runs on the internet. That's it.
I lost my other participant. Why didn't he come today? Okay. All right. The floor. I don't know your name at the back. Yeah. Yeah. Can you just give us a simple explanation of what is networks? I know we did this on Tuesday for the fellows, but I just want us to understand, because Mark said he existed before the World Wide Web existed.
All right, so fundamentally, the networks and networks of networks exist to allow fair access to a shared communication resource. So if you wanted to link a bunch of computers together, you could potentially theoretically do it by physically wiring them all directly to each other. But obviously there's a limit to how much you can do that, because the number of connections grows very quickly the more you add each participant. So the only way to realistically connect a whole bunch of computers together is to have them share some communication medium. And a variety of techniques existed over time in order to facilitate that fair use of the shared communication resource, and different technologies developed that were incompatible with each other. So abstraction layer was needed to allow networks of networks to be connected together. So that sort of abstraction layer needed to deal with issues like, how do we identify a computer on this network of networks in a way that it can be addressed? And also, how do we route the communication communication effectively? So we do that by breaking it up into small chunks. Those chunks we call packets at that level. And we route them like little mail letters, and they can go on independent paths. But unlike normal mail, obviously weird things can happen. They can get duplicated, they can get lost. All sorts of strange things like that can occur. So rules, protocols are needed in order to undo those weird effects that occur. So it feels like you're receiving a direct communication from another communication participant somewhere else in the world, and all that weirdness gets filtered out by the protocol layers below you. It's amazing how well they work, considering how long ago they were developed and how future forward they were in terms of applications that people couldn't even imagine back when the protocols were developed have been built on top of it. So if nothing else, the networks and the network protocols are a great example of how robust a layered architecture is at surviving resilience. But basically, network of networks, different fundamental wires, different fundamental protocols. They need to be able to talk to each other. Abstraction layer on top. That's what we consider to be the internet. And then, of course, on top of that, you can build specific services and things, and that's what we typically refer to as the web. The web, of course, originally was just that hypermedia collection created by Tim Berners-Lee at CERN, but now we use it more generally to refer to anything that's sort of at that top application layer, mostly, you know, browser related, but it's sort of a bit blurry now. But anyway, that's that. So
thank you very much. That was a very lovely summary. I think we're going to have this material online. If you ever want to, it's a good summary of what is the internet. That's a very good one. So I love the fact that he covered protocols and everything. So I'm going to be going through that. I'm trying to summarize everything that we did on the weekend and summarize the concepts that was thrown in the air. And for those who don't understand, or people understand them. I mean, we are a room of converted. That's why we are here. But for them to be able to explain to others. So what is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? The words internet and World Wide Web, which is like www, are sometimes used interchangeably. In reality, they mean different things. The internet is the infrastructure. If you listen, he used a lot of infrastructure protocol. So that's a bit the infrastructure that connects everything together, that connects these networks together. Whilst the www is one of the main tools we use to access information and communicate online. The www made the internet widely accessible for the first time. Guys, the people who build the internet and the people who build World Wide Web are all still alive. It's not people who are not in our generation. It's people who are here. That's why Mark said when I started, the World Wide Web wasn't as big as it is. It shows how fast the internet has grown. And that's why we were talking about cloud. The people who've been talking these things are not here. That's why we were talking about cloud policy. Was it a policy that he was talking about that's been put on government? It's because these concepts, when they were starting, it was small, but it's just ballooned so huge that if you're not part of this tool, technically you are connected to your community and your village. Connections will always be there. So you connected to your village, not to the world. And we all want to be connected to information. That's why it says www is one of the main tools we use to access information and communicate online. So how do you think about this? Think of this as a postal system. The internet is similar to the network of post offices. So you've got lots of post offices and letterboxes, whilst the www is like the letters and parcels we send via the system. Or you can think of the internet as a library, whilst www can be viewed as a collection of books in that library. So what happens on the internet in 60 seconds? This is two years old. In 2 years, this has changed drastically, especially because when this was released 3 months later, COVID happened. So whatever I'm gonna say here, make it 5 times or 10 times. So every minute, in every 60 seconds, 1.1 million US dollars is spent online. So if you're not participating on the e-commerce, think about this when you live here. 1.1 million, I think it could be billion now, it's spent online. Netflix, 764,000 of hours are watched every 1 minute. I have 3 kids and I know they're live. If they're not, even when I'm talking to them, they're watching something on Netflix. They're like, yeah, mom, yeah, mom, yeah. I always have to tell them I will close my Netflix account. On a different note, how many of you guys, how much is your budget, Cindy, for apps per month? Okay, so who pays for online subscriptions here? How much is your budget for online subscriptions? Yeah, no, I'm talking about that. iTunes, Netflix. Ah. 400. I had a hand there at the back. Yeah. Yeah. How much, who else, how much is, so if you have, yeah, 1.5. The average of people who have good access to internet, the average amount, he's spending 1,000 because he knows the internet very well. So he's got ways of saving. Those who don't know how to save on cloud saving, and I mean, for me, I have family cloud, there's other things. We estimate, because I pay for my children's subscriptions on other Showmax, Netflix, so when I take one, I take for family, everything. I spent like 2,000 on all those things, on just apps, on iTunes, it's a lot of money. So if you're not participating there, you get in the scrums of the internet. because we don't watch TV at my house. I think that's what makes it worse. We don't watch TV at all. We watch what we want to watch. So Netflix is big for us. Showmax is big for us. Besides that, there are other channels that are subscribed to. So it's like, if you're not participating on e-commerce, how many of you guys are selling clothes on WhatsApp? You know, when those people sell clothes on WhatsApp, we laugh at them. The network marketing people, guys, if you want to be rich in the next coming 5 years, you have to be participating on internet. Or you want to make money. Literally, that 2.5 billion of snaps created, Snapchat. It's not just Snapchat that like people are snapping themselves. Young people are snapping their body naked and what. Kim Kardashian made her income. It's not Kim, the other one. One who sells makeup. Kylie Jenner became the youngest billionaire in 2019. And the whole point of her becoming the young billionaire, it was through Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. So we need to start makeup that she wasn't selling anywhere else. Her product was sold on Instagram online. So I'm trying for you guys to just, Tinder is a different ballgame. I think marriages do come out of it, but they do happen. So, and we are being left behind because we're not participating. Percentage of internet users per country in relation to the inhabitants of the country. South Africa seems to be doing well because it says 50 to 59% of South Africans are using their internet. So this, I don't know what's happening with the 40%, but this is very old state. It might be different, a little bit different. So who makes the internet works? All of us. That's why the big sentence state says you, but we have like United Nations, regional, international organization, national governments, local governments, private sector, citizens like you, civil society, research community, and technical community. So that's very, very important. So we've explored what is the internet for me when we started. We're gonna go to, so we talked about my internet profile last week, so I'm not gonna go in detail on this. On Tuesday, where it says, let's talk about your relation to the internet. The first round of discussion is about what you perceive as your internet profile. So the internet profile is very important. And you might think of questions like, the examples that we had was some people have access, but maybe as part of family access has one device, uses internet for work mainly, and a bit of communication with friends. So some people has more than one device and a personal access on his mobile phone, but he hardly uses the internet at work, only for leisure and once or twice a week. Some has internet at an internet coffee and uses it for many reasons, chatting, information, gaming also. Why do South Africans use internet at an internet shop? They do one thing that is very common. Did you want to say something? Oh, you were drinking water. Most of the young people in South Africa go to the internet shop to do CVs. Do you guys know where CVs are made? If somebody was to hack internet shops in South Africa, they will find all South African CVs. I think I made my first CV at the internet shop. So it's like a big hub for internet access in terms of job creation in South Africa. And LinkedIn is literally getting better. People are beginning to understand that you can put it on LinkedIn. Once it's created, keep on updating the LinkedIn profile. And if we can get our South Africans to understand that, then we are on a right track. So I'm gonna skip the chart because I didn't give you guys the commenting things. We've talked about this. Who has the internet changed their life drastically here? Who has the internet changed their life drastically? It changed mine. Anyone who wants to share? I can share mine. Okay, so I started using the internet when I was a student at university. When I got there, Google was still being built as a platform. It wasn't big. So we were using Netscape, there were a lot of there were a lot of interconnected academia, internet access portals that we were using to search our books. So that's how I internally at university where I was, we used to have a chat box. So we could chat about anything. And that was the thing that really took us to the internet, because we knew you can chat to anybody on campus. And it was sort of a bit of, even though it was attached to a student number, there was an anonymity. So it was quite nice. Boys used to want to hit on us on that platform. But they really didn't. It worked and it didn't work. I think when Facebook came, it was easy for me to just leapfrog into Facebook because I was used to chatting like that. And when I go home, it would be such a different world because I was living in double worlds. So when I go home, I don't have a phone. We had a first phone, and it was like a brick. It was this huge, just connected to line voice. So I never participated on Mixit purely because I was scared. I then participated on WhatsApp when it came and other platforms. So it was easy for me to connect with the internet because of the world I lived in. Coming from university, I went straight to work into starting a coding school for women and girls. Because I had started a coding school, my email address is baratang@gmail.com. Many people ask me, how did you get it? Do you work for Gmail? I don't work for Gmail. It's because I was the first Baratang to apply for baratang@gmail.com. My Skype name when we were using Skype online was baratang@skype. Everything was Baratang because I was the first one to apply for everything. Like if I'm the earliest adopter of internet. We buy food online. I sit on bed and I buy my groceries every Saturday. I put that it should be delivered and it just come to the house. So because I'm the early adopter of their internet, just like Mark, I can't live without the internet. It's become part of, if you want to Google me, I'm one of those few people, if you Google, you'll find everything about me. I chose that deliberately because I work with young women and I want to encourage them and I want to show them how to use the internet positively without harming themselves. So you won't find anything that's very intrinsically, you won't find who I dated, who I go to coffee with in my personal life. You will find anything about me in terms of business, so I've positioned myself business-wise and myself as an individual that's very resourceful in terms of technical knowledge. And I do it deliberately. I positioned myself as a traveler. So I partner a lot with some traveling companies in terms of traveling. So I use it as a tool to market myself. And because of the internet, I'm named one of the 500 influential Africans in the world. And, and it's purely, I'll tell you why, it's purely because of the internet. It's the people that I engage with on the internet that has pushed my name up like to the top. When you search Barata, you quickly get here. And I used it as a tool. So one of the things that I did for myself as a favor is I learned to code. There are many things you can do. You don't need to learn how to code to be the best on the internet, but I learned to code. So now, because I learned how to code, and this is something I talk about all the time, selling how to code and the benefits of that. But there's lots of layers. So for me, what it did was the internet on its own, the people searching me. When I say the internet, Mark likes saying I'm from the internet. So I'm referring to people like the internet community has really positioned me to say, we trust what you're putting online and we like what you are saying. So that's a summary of how it changed my life. I wish it could do that for everybody. And I wish we could get to the point where everybody believes the internet is really going to change their lives, because whether we like it or not, it's here. It's how and who has access that's a challenge. And it's all those things that we're talking about policy-wise and everything. Because the internet is like a car. If you don't have a car, okay, that's a bit better example. You can walk. But the internet, it's like water. you need, it's like basic, something that you need. And that's why we always say we all need the internet. So I'm gonna go to my data, your data, and I'm gonna start that with a video. This one. So we talked a lot about my data, your data, our data. For those who are not here, we talked about the raw data, that being your data, my data being my raw data, and our data becoming what we see in public. You are on digital identity. I'm not there yet. I'm on this one, on Alexander. It doesn't play. There it is. This information was collected from all over the world by different participants of what they think my data, your data, our data is. So we're just gonna watch the video and then I'll go to the second slide. And the other thing that I've developed over the years of using internet too much is this. When I started using internet, I used to wait for half an hour for things to load. But nowadays, when somebody's doing things slow, I'm doing this because I'm used to fast internet. I pay for a very good Wi-Fi in my house. And I don't mind paying extra for a very good Wi-Fi because I want a good Wi-Fi.
Digital identitet.
شوفي ساوبوك.
الهوية الرقمية هي مجموع ما أملكه داخل الإنترنت.
Il mio alter ego, diciamo.
Ma arvan, et see on nagu ID-kaart, aga siis äkki digitaalne?
Penso alla mia identità su internet, quindi al nickname che ho sui social, Regina del Divano.
Identidad digital viene a ser lo que hay en internet sobre vos.
من أفكار ومعارف وأصدقاء وصور وذكريات.
Nevím, moje fotografie, odkud jsem, data, kreditní karty, hesla, s kým komunikuju, vlastně celý souhrn informací o mně.
The infringement of privacy.
Penso em toda a minha informação que está associada a este meu perfil de utilizador da internet.
A whole host of information and metadata that reflects your choices, utterances, websites you visit, places you've been online.
All of these various levels of information that you leave, your pictures, your data, your documents that you store on the cloud, all of these things constitute your digital identity.
Para o Sistema Nacional de Saúde, eu sou uma identidade. Para o banco, sou outra identidade. Com os meus amigos, sou uma outra coisa.
I'm not just an Indian English-speaking person going online. I'm also a queer person. I'm also someone who was born a woman.
A identidade digital é a forma como as pessoas estão circulando pela internet.
Portanto, eu acredito que o facto de termos várias identidades digitais é um benefício.
Preferisco tenerle tutte frammentate perché è più difficile trovarmi.
Trebuie să fiu un pic altfel. Și pe Instagram, și pe Facebook, și în email。
咁基於呢個情況之下咧，我就會更加傾向咧就係擁有唔同嘅帳戶啦，同埋係可以匿名咁樣去進行好多嘅唔同活動。
أحب أكون معروف الهوية لأن أنا أحب أتعامل مع أشخاص معروفين.
Jeśli chodzi o mnie, to chciałbym w wielu miejscach pozostać jednak anonimowy.
A myslím si, že bych nechtěla být anonymní.
لا مجهول. And the internet needs to be big enough to accommodate all of these identities.
No, lo scopo preciso non lo conosco.
Ma ei tea, milleks seda infot kasutatakse või kas seda üldse kasutatakse.
They collect that data so that they do all these pop-ups.
Os governos usam a internet para obter informações.
Ni ukugira ngo njyewe ntashobora guhuza n'undi muntu cyangwa se ntashobora gukora ibikorwa bibinyuze kuri
Credo che lo facciano per due ragioni fondamentali, per il controllo sociale e per spingerci a comprare magari quello che desideriamo.
Companies collect your data for a number of reasons, to be able to keep tabs on you, to be able to sell you things that you don't want.
كثير في نظريات وكثير في اوقات بيحكوا انهم مثلا بتجسسوا علينا او بيسمعوا منا شغلات، مثلا انت تكون بتحكي جوالي مثلا والله اكل برجر، ففجاه بتفتح تليفونك على الفيسبوك تبلش تنزل اعلانات على مطعم البرجر الفلاني وعروض فلانيه.
Questa è una cosa che ogni tanto mi chiedo, se qualcuno dietro internet può spiare i nostri movimenti e i nostri modi di pensare.
Les citoyens ne sont pas très au courant de ce qui se passe à propos de leurs données. Et donc c'est le point de départ de toute une série de fantasmes.
Con esa información hacen negocio.
Ja, som marketinginformation tänker jag.
Rero nicyo gituma ntekereza ko kampani zikoresha izo data kugira ngo zibashe kutugeraho nk'abantu bakurikije ibyo dukunda.
I believe the companies use that to make my experience a better thing.
Supposedly they're giving me a better browsing experience, but it's more for their business purposes.
Den Möglichkeiten, die die sozialen Netzwerke bieten, geben wir, um die Dienste zu erhalten, sehr schnell alle unseren Daten irgendwelchen Dritten und verlieren die Kontrolle über sie.
Έχουμε χωρίς να έχεις ιδέα του τι κάνεις, γιατί δεν θες να διαβάσεις 50 σελίδες κείμενο για το τι υπογράφεις.
Do I know where the data goes? I do not know.
Se almacena en muchos lugares seguramente.
Data aho zijya rero buriya sinzi ko twese tuba tuhazi.
I do have an idea of where the data goes.
80% of the data that we have is owned by companies.
Sí, yo creo que se almacena en la nube.
Internet data goes into company servers, private company servers.
Eu não sei para onde vão meus dados, mas eu sei que eles são valiosos.
أكيد المعلومات تتقسم لجهات تجارية ولأسباب أمنية تستخدم كمان للدعاية والإعلان برضه باحتمال.
O grande problema envolvendo a identidade digital é que a gente não sabe exatamente para onde e como vão ser tratados nossos dados.
Just saying simplistic solutions that, for example, we should all own our own data, it's in practice very difficult because you're asking for people to take ownership of things they don't have the technical know-how to handle.
O principal problema é que as pessoas não sabem e não têm ideia do que vai ser feito com os dados delas depois da coleta.
The journey of data is really complicated. It has its own life, essentially, once it leaves your device. So data from your phone is going to somewhere in this room. There's probably a wireless access point, and from there it's going to the nearest ISP, and it will at some point wind up in these massive centers all over the world called IXPs, which are internet exchange points. There, the data is hopped around quite a bit based on contracts and something that's called peering. And that path takes it even further to its endpoint, wherever that might be. It may become broken into pieces and disassociated with itself, maybe ceases to become personal data, but it's used to provide better services to you or better services to other people. It can also just not exist anymore because maybe it's turned into machine learning. It's now part of the way a computer thinks about the rest of the data that it gets. So it's moved around quite a bit.
Ja.
Mislim da ne mogu koristiti besplatno sigurno naše podatke i naročito bez našeg znanja, bez da nam to jako dobro objasne.
Eu posso fornecê-los a título gratuito porque indiretamente os serviços dão-me vantagens.
ما في عدالة لأنهم بيجبروك إنهم يأخذوا منك المعلومات.
E niente, penso che internet sicuramente è giusto in qualche modo che riesco a avere dei dati, non quelli troppo personali secondo il mio punto di vista, ed è giusto perché è um serviço que viene messo gratuitamente.
Penso que o que seria justo era não partilharem os meus dados, mas como isso não é uma possibilidade, eu penso que eu deveria receber montante.
Jeśli chodzi o mnie, nie spodziewam się zapłaty za to, że udostępniam dane. Ja po prostu chcę mieć wybór, że tych danych mogę nie udostępniać.
The advertising platforms don't really sell your data. They sell access to advertising platforms and ad networks so that advertisers can find out what you want. But they don't sell the data, they keep it for themselves because that is the most valuable thing they have.
Sensitive information being sold to other companies is a danger and a concern.
rero hari igihe ibintu ureba cyangwa ukorera kuri interinete bishobora gukoreshwa suwa kukugirira nabi cyangwa mu buryo wowe utifuza.
Αλλά το ρίσκο είναι ότι είμαστε ανοιχτοί στο να δεχόμαστε όρους τους οποίους δεν αντιλαμβανόμαστε πλήρως.
Donc là, il devrait y avoir une espèce de mouvement collectif de la part des gestionnaires de données pour être tout à fait transparent par rapport à la manière dont ils les gèrent.
In the future, there will be tools that will allow us to say, I want this to happen with my data and I don't want this to happen to my data.
Bych ráda měla v tom nějaké slovo, že bych kontrolovala vlastně, co tam je a s čím souhlasím, s čím ne.
You don't know how long that data has been there, and you as a person, your habits and behaviors will constantly be tracked based on your past history. So I find that very problematic.
A questão da identidade digital, ela envolve dois debates. O primeiro envolve a eficiência, a aceleração e a automatização de processos e de serviços. Porém, de outro lado, a gente tem debate envolvendo privacidade e liberdade de expressão.
Risk är att man mister lite av sitt eget privatliv.
hogy számos helyen mindent tudnak rólunk.
هذا انتهاك الخصوصية وحقي في الخصوصية هذا حق أصيل ما حد له حق إنه ينتهكه.
Right now, technology is changing faster than we have ever expected. And if we do not take into cognizance all these multiple identities, it will be too late.
How do we make sure that people are protected?
Temos todos os riscos associados às fraudes bancárias, aos roubos de identidade.
Então não fico muito preocupado pela forma como as informações a meu respeito circulam, porque eu sou só cidadão comum mesmo.
A já ani nemám co moc skrývat, tak asi proto s tím nemám žádný problém.
इनको मंगोगुरु पर दुनिया के cyber bullying या cyber crime या cyber issues mot saradi.
Personligen så tycker jag att allting ska nog klumpas samman, för då blir det lättare att ta reda på vem det är som publicerar vad och på så vis kanske komma underfund med vilka av liksom cyberterroristhot och andra sådana saker, så det skulle kunna vara lättare.
Fasihataka ekiga gonjahunta besmiga hamai bahuri. Egotum miedo internet ben koggen vara bawr nedeve amaltange bahinga.
In the regular world, there's the police service. So you go to bed knowing that the police is going to keep you safe. Who is the police keeping you safe on the internet?
Nous, ce qu'on souhaiterait, c'est une identité en ligne qui soit indépendante et qui soit sous le contrôle des utilisateurs.
Preljeni smo ili nemamo dovoljno vremena da bi se udubili dovoljno i da bi proučili o čemu se radi i kako da se zaštitimo.
But if we don't take the responsibility to educate ourselves about how identity can be used both for and against us, we are leaving one of the most important things to us as human beings in the hands of other people, and we shouldn't do that.
Il sistema dovrebbe darmi modo e darmi un sistema per poter gestire io il mio ID.
Come user ekives ena protective fava user ekange bevanje nage.
Že nevím přesně, kde by měl mít zodpovědnost za to identitu na internetu.
إذا كانت الدولة أحسن. أنا أعتقد جهات خاصة غير حكومية يكون فيها خبراء وناس ثقة نعتمد عليهم.
Pero al menos deberían existir unas leyes que protegiesen a los usuarios y, sobre todo, no solo la ley, sino un equipo que se encargase de hacer que esa ley se cumpliese, que es normalmente el mayor problema.
It's more than one. It's multiple issues, multiple identities.
Mesmo fisicamente, nós somos diversos.
Notre vie économique
notre vie sexuelle pour certaines, notre vie bancaire, notre vie de couple, nos relations individuelles, nos relations en famille. Tout se trouve en ligne aujourd'hui.
Jeg synes, det er greit å ha ulike profiler på internett.
Derfor synes jeg, at vi skal have lov til at have flere digitale identiteter, lidt ligesom vi skal have lov til at have hemmeligheder.
Jeg foretrækker én digital identitet, som samler alle oplysninger.
我會傾向咧係將我嘅帳戶咧係分散咁樣去管理，而唔係將佢捆綁成為一個大嘅個體啦。
That just because we buy something doesn't mean you should know what's my race, what's my religion, where do I live, how many children do I have.
I chciałbym współdzielić rzeczy, które ja chcę współdzielić.
咁但係更重要嘅係咧，我認為分散咗唔同嘅一個嘅帳戶咧，係可以令到我哋更加健康咁樣去管理。因為好多時候，如果我哋將所有嘅account 係捆綁埋一齊咧，其實喺我哋面對一啲嘅網絡攻擊嘅時候咧，係會更加嘅脆弱，佢哋會變得更好容易就會受到攻擊啦。
Myślę, że najbardziej ufam sobie i ufam swojemu wyborowi.
Deswegen glaube ich, ist es ganz, ganz wichtig, dass wir nicht nur mit staatlichen Regelungen den Datenschutz fördern, sondern dass wir auch die Verantwortung des Einzelnen stärken.
Bring people to these tables. And that means putting the money where your mouth is.
Deswegen ist also der Hinweis auf das Bildungssystem und der mündige Bürger, das sind wichtige Elemente, wenn wir wirklich zu einer besseren Internetwelt kommen wollen.
So that's what people all over the world think. Now let's summarize what story does data tell about us? So there's a quantum of 3. In a smaller scale, what you share is links you send, email addresses, card expiry date, emojis used, people tagged on, gender, birth date. That becomes your behavior on the internet. Then your behavior on the internet shows time zone. So when, let's say I'm posting on Twitter, I think Facebook is more selling than, or Google. Google and Facebook make more money than the rest in terms of marketing. So I'm sharing links, emails, and emojis, people I tag, my gender. What Facebook is seeing is time zone, ads viewed, my shopping patterns, typing speed, device location, SMS history, phone calls history. Like my iPhone now knows my face, my finger, my typing speed. So it's all those that they are seeing. Even though for me, I'm calling Sonabo and I talk. Now, iPhone is the only place where it will tell people who I call, how long I talk to them. And they even know my behavior of my fingers more than I even know it myself. Then there's another level of machine, which is they would call sort of the AR analysis of it. What it sees about us, with me sharing just my email, my cards, buying, searching, it's already seeing my diets, my real estate, am I a cat owner or not, my new job. It's determined my IQ level, my income level, my political affiliations. It was a very dangerous move that they did. If you want to listen to one of the TED Talk about political affiliations, where most countries believe Facebook was driving the voting. When I was in Brazil, there was a huge, like the last elections they had, a huge political move to ban Facebook. And Facebook blocked most of those people to say Facebook is perpetuating how the voting is gonna go. So it also knows away from hometown. So it depends on who you are. These things, if they can see them, they can't. I know that for a person like Mark, maybe they might not be seeing these things because he just makes sure they don't. For me, when I'm traveling around, I switch off my location if I don't want people to know where I'm going, like, especially on weekends. I switch off my location deliberately, and because they can still track my location on other things. 90% of the time, I just switch off my phone, leave it at home, and drive around with nothing. So nobody's tracking me in that instance, purely because of how connected I am. But now, these days, they can even track me through my daughter because I'm connected with her on the Apple phone. And they can track, oh, she's here, she's here, she's here, and she's using this card, this card, this card. That means her whole degree of influence. So whether we like it or not, that's why I say to people, whether we like it or not, we are on the internet. Customer types such as conscious shopper or compulsive shopper, newly engaged, they like posting there when they get engaged. We know about it. So there's different ways to see data or data. So I'm going to use these two different ways when I refer to do different things. It's not correct, but I choose to do that today so that we can all understand it. So when I say data, I mean content creation. When I say data, I mean the way we say it in South Africa. I'm saying what's on my phone, what connects me. I mean cell phones, Cell C, Vodacom, that. When I say my data, I mean knowledge. That's for me. So when you comment, please clarify which one are you talking about, because there's two elements and I don't want to confuse them. So the way we see data, we can see it as a resource. So that way we mean that data is a resource that can be exploited. It can be owned by a person or a company. It can be produced, extracted, sold, and bought. The second way you can see data is you can see it as labor. So when you post things online or share images, you are performing a small job, which is creation of data. The third way you can see data is data as a personal reflection. You are reflected in data about you, your relationships, your behavioral patterns, your preferences. So data is an online you, so it should come with basic human rights. The third way to see data is data as an infrastructure. So the increasing importance of data for the function of society has changed its nature. It can now be seen as core infrastructure on which other services and products are built on. So this is not, it doesn't mean because you're seeing it as one, you can't see it as the other. You can have it as a hybrid, but one way or the other, it's seen as one of these four every time we talk about it. So let's explore it. We talked about our relation to data the other day, so I'm going to skip this for those. I'm assuming everybody has, 80% of the people have been here for the whole week, so I'm going to skip and try to make, we want to leave here at lunch. So I'm trying very hard. Is there a session after lunch? Ooh. Oh, so that's a bit awkward. Because those people have prepared to speak after lunch, yeah, so Bama. I'll try to cover as much as I can, but try to make sure that we have maybe a longer lunch. So take note on the 3 worksheets provided in the storyboard. I'm not going to provide you with storyboards because this is like workshops that I do with people and collect data. So the launcher, now that you've seen the video, let's talk about your digital identity. We spoke about digital identities. What do you think is the most important? What is not so central to you? For you, what is your digital? Your digital, your identity. Who has an online identity and I'll use the word persona. Persona as in how you present yourself. So I'll just take 2 or 3 comments around that. Okay. Okay, seeing there's no comment, are you aware? Oh, you wanted to, oh, sorry,
Yes.
sorry. I thought you were.
No, I was looking for someone, but I thought, okay, since I'm holding the mic, that's an interesting question because I feel like digitally people don't want to necessarily give 100% of who they are. Because I think I was in a conversation yesterday when they felt like if you give you 110% identity, then it's almost like you're a bit vulnerable online. And then in terms of your own personal life, the people that know you would say, obviously, that doesn't represent who you are entirely. But me, myself, and I'd say what you see online is who I am. I'm an extrovert, but at the same time, I'm an introvert in my own way. So it's representative, I think, of my both elements in terms of who I am. So my persona, you wouldn't get it 110% online until you actually meet me in person.
Okay. So now, you wanted to say something? Okay.
So free advice for young people who are still growing. What you need is a persona. A persona is what how you position yourself in the world and what you decide to tell the world. It does not necessarily, because nobody will have an exact, like, clear identity of themselves online, but you can create a persona. So I use my persona, what I sell to the world, and what you see online are like sisters, twins. And it's because I made sure that if I'm presenting here, I have someone tweeting about it, I'm going to put it on my Instagram, I'm going to tell the world I'm doing. So that is why I call a persona. It's like you need to sit and create, because that's what marketers do. Who am I? Where do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? And use LinkedIn to get you there, especially LinkedIn, or use different platforms to get you there. Now, I have my persona of who I want to be. So my dream is to see myself working at the UN. It's a very difficult thing to get there. It's so easy to get there, depending on who you are. If you work for government, then it's like a chain, and you apply and you get it there. But if you're a citizen and you want to get there, it's another mission. Now, for me, I'm building a persona that will get me there. Because people like reading who you are on the internet. And if you don't create the person, I'm not saying go build yourself on the internet. And a mimicry you is never going to exist on the internet. We're going to take 5, 10, 15 years maybe to get the real, or no. We do have with VR and what is being launched, but it's still a mimicry of what you want people to see.
So that's my 2 cents of saying we all need to be on the internet. So are you aware that you have one or more digital identities? Could you name them and describe them? Like some people have a social media, they've got an educational identity. I'll tell you, I have a social media identity. I have an educational identity because I studied at the University of Cape Town. They're keeping my records. They're the ones who can tell you how good I am in terms of what they've assessed in terms of my brain. I have a finance one because the banks are keeping the records. The health one, when I go to the hospital, I go to the same doctor. I've been going to the same doctor for 20 years. She knows everything about me. And when I travel and I have records, I bring them back to her so that she can keep track of what's happening in my body. And the government already has enough about me in terms of my ID, so I've got all these identities. Somebody one day is going to build a platform that will collect all that. We don't know when and how. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm going to skip the COVID-19. So what are for your main differences between the online world and the real world in relation to data, e.g. usage, storage, transmission? So if anybody wants to explain how these 3 concepts relate, usage, storage, and transmission, the guy who just drank a glass of water. Can you tell me what you think of when I talk about what are your main differences between online world and real world in relation to data, e.g. usage, storage, and transmission?
Online world and real, online world. Okay, so online world, it's basically like an abstract concept or base. So like you can do anything, you can put whatever, you can even like store, let's say 10 terabytes worth of information on cloud. Whereas in real life, there are limitations because maybe let's say you design a specific type of hard drive that can only store X type of data. So like I think that would be like the main difference.
And the transmission?
With physical, it would be like very real world, it will be like very direct. So like base A and base B like connected, whereas with online, you can be anywhere and then just at a click of a button, send whatever you're sending, yeah.
Okay. As I said, like he said, anyone who has a different view, you can always contact him after at lunch and debate that. But at the moment, we're going to introduce in the session. It is very important to present this launcher and put it. So I'm going to skip the data models, but I'll just read what are the benefits and disadvantages of the advantages and the limitations of different models. So if you look at data as a resource, what that means is data is a resource that can be exploited. It can be owned by a person or a company. It can be produced, extracted, and sold. So extracted, sold, and bought. The advantages of that is it gives value back to producers of data. So me as a producer, I get back something from it. The limitations is the complex to realize technically. It's complex to realize technically. Value of individual data is low. Value comes from aggregation. I never thought about this statement. Value comes from aggregation. Does anybody want to explain it? Oh, yeah, thank you. Just, can you give a mic? Yeah, it's just because I also didn't understand it.
Right, so there's a hierarchy of concepts related to things like data and information. At the lowest level, you have data, which is just an individual datum, a factor, and observation. By itself, 10 degrees. What does that mean? Not very useful. Above that, you've got information. So 10 degrees Celsius in Johannesburg. That's kind of useful, tells you a bit more. Above that, you've got, let's say, knowledge, which would be the fact that that is maybe sort of 10 degrees Celsius. Above that, you've got knowledge. So we know that that's maybe, comfortable enough or a little bit chilly. And then wisdom would be level above that, which would be maybe wear a jacket, right? So you've got these different levels of processing that occurs with information that add value at each step. So knowing that someone clicked on a link doesn't tell you that much. Knowing that it was a link to a product that you supply, worth a lot more. Knowing that they have an LSM value or that they're at an LSM, a lifestyle measurement bracket, that means that they have disposable income, even better. So at each level of abstraction, not abstraction, at each level of processing, there's more value that's been added. So aggregation, that's bringing together. If you can combine a lot of data from different sources and construct models based on that to make predictions about how people behave or about what's going to happen, then you've added value. So the value gets added through additional levels of processing.
I think we understood that. Do we understand that? So me as one person in South Africa, my data means nothing. All of us collectively aggregating it, it becomes a big thing for, let's say, gender-based violence. If one woman walks around saying, oh, I'm experiencing gender-based violence, people are like, oh, yeah. Yeah, the police do this. This is what we hear when we're dealing with gender-based violence cases. You get to the police station and you say, this man beat me yesterday. They say, how many times? Was it just yesterday? Is it the first time? It's not like that. Because there's no, they want aggregation. They want you to say, he always does it. That's what they say when they say, and I hear when you say like, just one line is not enough. Maybe for you to understand what my wisdom is, you have to aggregate what you saw from me this weekend and and make it big. So you're aggregating the value of the data. So those are the limitations. The advantages, it gives back to producers of data. It's complex to realize that technically, because the value of individual data is very low, value comes from aggregation. There's people who their data can be realized. They don't need, how do influencers influence us? You comment.
How do influencers influence us?
Yeah, an influencer will give data, and then they say they call them influencers. What makes their data valuable?
So number one, it's usually the type of reach. So when a brand approaches an influencer, number one, it's they see that the influencer obviously has a reach to the database that they're looking for. And obviously with Instagram, the main thing that you are looking at is quality of life, whether it's in beauty, health, traveling, lifestyle, etc. And they understand that the reason why people are following them are for those different aspects, because you don't have, obviously you have fitness influencers, you have food influencers, you have musician influencers, etc. So they speak to what's appealing and what people desire, and understand that the reach that they have will speak to that as well.
Yeah. So thanks. That's a I asked her because she's an expert. With a person like Oprah, remember when Oprah said, "Oh, I won't eat McDonald's anymore," and the following day, the McDonald's sales had to drop. So there are those people who their voice has so much value because the world believes in the data they say. So the content, if Oprah was to tweet and say, "Oh, tomorrow we must all buy 500 gigs of data," because it's just how it is. If you don't have 500 gig, your phone is not going to function properly. Chances are half of the women in the world are going to believe it, or even men. It's just those people who are vulnerable to taking data that they haven't filtered. That's like the marketing data. And that is why the companies are saying we can't pay an individual. They do have individuals they pay because the value comes from aggregation. So they know that other people are going to retweet you, save your posts. All those metrics they use is what aggregate your data. Further questions? The other question is, who should own this resource? Is it the person extracting it or the person whom it is extracting?